Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're delving into a chilling story from the world of aviation, one that serves as a stark reminder of how a series of seemingly small oversights can lead to a near catastrophe. This is the incredible story of British Airways Flight 38, an incident that unfolded in the skies over London and ended just meters from disaster. Our story begins on January 17, 2008. The aircraft is a state-of-the-art Boeing 777-200ER, operating as British Airways Flight 38, on a long-haul journey from Beijing to London Heathrow. On board are 136 passengers and 16 crew members. The flight itself was completely routine, a standard 11-hour trip across continents. The pilots, Captain Peter Burkill and Senior First Officer John Coward, were experienced professionals, navigating the massive jetliner with practiced ease. As they began their descent into London, everything seemed perfectly normal. The weather was fine, the aircraft was performing flawlessly, and air traffic control was guiding them in for a standard approach to runway 27L at one of the world's busiest airports. No one on that plane could have possibly imagined the terrifying ordeal that was about to unfold in the final 2 minutes of their journey. As Flight 38 lined up for its final approach, flying at an altitude of just 720 feet and about 2 miles from the runway, something went critically wrong. Without any warning, the right engine, and then just seconds later, the left engine, began to lose power. On the flight deck, the auto throttle, which automatically manages engine thrust, commanded more power to maintain the glide path, but the engines didn't respond. Instead, they both rolled back to idle. The pilots were suddenly faced with a pilot's worst nightmare: a double engine failure on final approach, with a massive, fully laden passenger jet turning into a 200-ton glider. Captain Burkill immediately took manual control of the aircraft, his years of training kicking in. Senior First Officer Coward was flying the plane at the time, and he made a crucial adjustment, retracting the flaps slightly. This was a counterintuitive but brilliant move. While retracting flaps reduces lift, it also reduces drag, allowing the aircraft to glide further. It was a trade-off, but it was the only trade-off that could give them a fighting chance of even reaching the airport grounds. Below them, the sprawling suburbs of London were getting dangerously close. They were too low and too slow to make it to the runway. On the flight deck, the atmosphere was intensely focused. Captain Burkill calmly declared a mayday, alerting air traffic control to the emergency. Inside the cabin, passengers who were just moments ago preparing for a smooth landing were suddenly aware that something was terribly wrong. The familiar roar of the engines had vanished, replaced by an eerie silence. The plane began to shudder and descend at an alarming rate. Looking out the windows, they could see the ground rushing up to meet them, much faster than it should have been. The crew, demonstrating incredible professionalism, shouted for passengers to brace for impact. Panic began to set in as the reality of their situation became terrifyingly clear. They were not going to make it to the runway. They were going to crash. With incredible skill and composure, the pilots managed to clear the busy perimeter road, the A30, and the airport's perimeter fence. But they had run out of altitude and airspeed. At precisely 12:42 p.m., the Boeing 777 slammed into the grass about 270 meters short of the paved runway surface. The impact was violent. The landing gear collapsed, with the right main gear separating and piercing the fuselage and the wing's fuel tank. The left main gear was pushed up through the wing, and the nose gear buckled. The aircraft skidded across the muddy ground, spinning slightly before coming to a grinding halt right on the edge of the runway threshold. Miraculously, despite the catastrophic impact, there was no fire. The cabin crew immediately initiated an emergency evacuation. Slides were deployed, and all 152 people on board were evacuated from the wrecked airliner. The aftermath was a scene of controlled chaos. Emergency services swarmed the aircraft within minutes. While the plane was a total loss, the human outcome was nothing short of a miracle. Of the 152 people on board, there were no fatalities. There was one serious injury, a passenger who suffered a broken leg, and a handful of minor injuries. First Officer Coward, Captain Burkle, and the entire cabin crew were hailed as heroes. Their calm, quick-thinking actions in the face of an unprecedented emergency had averted a major disaster and saved everyone on board. The incident immediately sparked a massive investigation. How could two of the most reliable engines in the world, the Rolls-Royce Trent 800s, fail simultaneously without any warning? The investigation, led by the UK's Air Accidents Investigation Branch, or AAIB, was one of the most complex in modern aviation history. Initially, theories ranged from fuel contamination to software glitches, even electromagnetic interference. Investigators meticulously examined every component of the aircraft, particularly the fuel system. The engines themselves showed no signs of mechanical failure. The mystery deepened when data from the flight recorders revealed that the fuel was flowing to the engines right up until the point of the power loss. So, if the fuel was flowing, why did the engines stop responding? The breakthrough came when investigators focused on the fuel-oil heat exchangers. These are critical components that use warm oil to heat the superchilled fuel, preventing ice crystals from forming and clogging the system. The investigation concluded that the cause was something that had never been seen before in a Boeing 777. During the long flight over Siberia, the aircraft was exposed to extremely cold temperatures for an extended period. This caused a small amount of water, which is naturally present in all jet fuel, to freeze into soft, slushy ice crystals within the fuel lines. As the plane descended into the warmer air of London and the engines demanded more power for the final approach, these accumulated ice crystals were released. They flowed downstream and clogged the face of the fuel-oil heat exchangers. This blockage restricted the flow of fuel to both engines, essentially starving them of power at the most critical phase of flight. It was a 1 in a billion scenario, a subtle design vulnerability that had gone unnoticed for over a decade of the 777's service life. In response to the findings, both Boeing and Rolls-Royce implemented immediate changes. The fuel-oil heat exchanger was redesigned to improve its performance and prevent ice from accumulating in the same way. The Federal Aviation Administration and other global aviation authorities issued airworthiness directives, mandating these changes for all Boeing 777s equipped with Trent 800 engines. Flight procedures were also updated to help pilots manage fuel temperatures on long, cold flights. The crash of British Airways Flight 38, while terrifying, ultimately made flying safer for everyone. It was a powerful lesson in how even the most robust and reliable systems can have hidden vulnerabilities, and it highlighted the incredible importance of pilot skill, training, and grace under pressure. The miracle on the Hudson gets a lot of attention, but the miracle at Heathrow is an equally astonishing story of survival against all odds, thanks to the quick thinking of a heroic flight crew. Thank you so much for joining me for this incredible story. If you found this as fascinating as I did, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel for more deep dives into the world of aviation. And as always, fly safe.